So the software that I currently use is, I'm going to use the word clunky. So if I were to just literally focus on it 100%, I could probably get that down. But that, even if it was 3 hours, it's still a long time to be doing a survey.
Especially when you think about the cost of that in terms of your labour rate. But if there was a way of accelerating that, that frees up your weekends for a start.
I'm working 8 days a week. I have done
8 days a week. You've started using ChatGPT to simplify parts of that process.
Yeah.
But in parallel, we've been building a solution with you that will enable you to truly accelerate that process.
That's quite scary, isn't it?
Hi, I'm Freya. Welcome to the Skynet Chronicles, Business in the AI Age, the podcast that dives deep into the world where artificial intelligence meets business. Join us as we explore the latest trends, challenges, and opportunities in this ever-evolving landscape. From innovative startups to established enterprises, we'll uncover the secrets behind the successful integration of AI technologies. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and get ready to unlock the mysteries of business in the AI age.
So good morning, Neil, and welcome to the Skynet Chronicles. So we'll start with a bit about you. Neil Aylin, building surveyor, innovator. Did you ever think those words were going to be used?
No.
Well, they are being used. So let's start with the process that you used to use for domestic 3 surveys.
So it'll be level 2 or level 3. So, so the software that I currently use is, I'm going to use the word clunky. In this, it's quite good in the sense that you push buttons and it puts the clauses into the right place, but it still takes a long time to put survey together. So it pulls clauses out of a database, puts them into the right order, but a lot of the clauses are not very well written. So there's a lot of editing that has to be done, and not every clause will cater for every single eventuality. Yeah. So it will give you the basics, but you're always going to have to amend it. There's a lot of editing that has to be done. There's a lot of clauses that you have to rewrite, which then become almost like a stock clause that you just pull in.
And so that process of doing a survey, what are you doing on site versus how much time you're spending there, how much time you're spending in the back office?
So the difference is when I first started, it's not that dissimilar. The difference is I don't write anything now. So when I first started, I take photographs of everything. So we have to take even photographs of things that are wrong, even things that are not wrong. We have to take photographs of where if there's a wardrobe in the way. We have to take a photograph of it because
you don't know what
we don't know what's behind. So if the wardrobe once it's gone, and then the customer says, "Oh, there's a big crack in the wall. We didn't see it." Then I can say, "Well, I've got a photograph to prove." Well, that's the reason it's because there was a big wardrobe in the way. So you photograph the lot. So I'll walk around the house first of all, taking lots of photos. Then what I used to do was I'd sit in the car and I'd start typing notes. Obviously writing my notes, which is obviously a process in itself. Now, although this isn't necessarily part of the AI part, but what I'd now just dictate into my iPad. So I will then, everything I photographed, I then go back again and then I start talking. And I start, what am I seeing? What can I see? Just walk around. And then I might move around the rooms a bit. So I might go into a bedroom, then I might go into another bedroom. Unfortunately, I have to remember that when I've come out of one bedroom, I'm going back into the first bedroom again. I tell myself that it's the first bedroom. Otherwise,
just so that it's there on the recording.
Exactly, it all gets a bit confused. Yeah. So I'll put as much information as I can. So I actually don't even take a pen with me now when I do a survey. Everything's all photographs and dictation.
Yeah.
And then when I get back to the office, now so obviously some surveyors do this as they're walking around. My brain doesn't work like that. I have to do things in quite a structured way, which means I don't miss things. Because if I don't do it, I have a way of doing it. That's the way I do it, and for me to change that way, it's gonna.
Yeah, it's the process that works for you.
Yeah, it's the process that works for me. So, so when I get back to the office, then I have a term which I call roughing out, which is all of the basic details, which obviously you put the address in. What was the weather like? Was it sunny? That's a big one I put in now, because often you do a survey, especially this time of the year, you look up a roof and the sun's right in your eyes. You can't see anything because, so all that's relevant, because again, if I do a report and someone says, well, you've missed a tile on the roof, or then I can say, well, the reason I missed a tile was because the sun was right in my eyes and I just couldn't physically see it. So all of these things go into the report. Then I start talking about just generally what I see. So, and then, so that's how I use it. So I rough out first, and then I go into more detail. Then I literally sit at my desk and start to go through it.
And so how long did that process used to take?
So, well, it's still taking a while. So to do, it takes me a bit longer to do it because I've got a bit of OCD. When I'm going through everything has to be
OCD when you're looking for detail is a good thing.
Is a good thing. Yeah. No, absolutely. But in the actual report, what I won't just do is just throw it out. So I probably read it 4, 5, 6 times. So I do it. There's a process. So I do my roughing out first, which is all the basic details. Then I'll sit at the computer properly and start to read it, and then start to physically put things in, reword it, etc., etc. Then I do a draft. Then I'll read the draft. Then I find all the problems wrong with the draft. I go back into it again. Yep. Then I missed that bit out. Then I start looking at commas and full stops or whatever. So in terms of time, it could be taking me 4 hours to do a report.
That's 4 hours in the back office.
It can take. Yeah, and sometimes if I'm doing a level 3 survey, they could be even longer. But it takes me a while. But someone that does this all the time and probably has the mental concentration, because although it's 4 hours, that's not 4 hours solid. That's 4 hours. That's me doing a bit, probably having a cup of tea, looking at my phone. I have ADD, which means focus is a bit of a problem for me. So I'll look at it, do it. Then, so if I were to just literally focus on it 100%, I could probably get that down. But even if it was 3 hours, it's still a long time to be doing a survey.
Especially when you think about the cost of that in terms of your labour rate. And so if there was a way to reduce that down to an hour, bear in mind it's still you as an expert, you're signing your name on this, so it has to be to a super high quality. But if there was a way of accelerating that frees up your weekends for a start, but also gives you the ability to potentially take on more surveys and ultimately to scale that to other resources.
100%. I mean, that's my biggest problem. This time of year, I could easily do 2 surveys a day. In the winter, it's not as easy because obviously the light's not as bright. I can't be doing surveys in nighttime hours, obviously. So I could easily do 2 a day. Well, even if I said, well, I'll only do surveys 4 days, that's 8 surveys a week. I can't physically type 8 reports a week. I'm working 7-8 days a week. I have done
8 days a week. That is impressive.
That's impressive.
I have been asking for an extra 4 weeks in the working month, but I've not managed to get 8 days in a week.
Yeah, you got that one quick. Yeah. So 7. No, but I'm working. I'm doing evenings, Saturdays and Sundays. So I have no life. I moved house last year and it's still upside down. I just don't have the time to do things that I want to do. And even actually last Saturday, I kind of had a day off thinking, a nice lot of work to do. But nothing was as urgent. Yeah. But I thought, crikey, if I actually get a day off. And actually next week we got a bank holiday. Happy days.
Does that mean a day off or does that mean
no, it probably
an
just
extra
means,
working day?
Well, it's a working day, but the good thing about Saturdays and Sundays, I have no other pressures. So I don't have anyone else ringing me. I don't have to answer emails. I don't even have to do reports. But because my job is very time sensitive, so if I start on a Monday and I say I'm going to get the report back to you within 5 to 10 working days, well, that means if I do it on a Monday, I have to get it back very latest by the following Friday. Yeah. Well, if I've got that Saturday and Sunday, that's not included in those 10 days. So that means technically I've got 14 days to do it.
It feels like free time, but you don't then get a chance to relax.
I don't get a chance to relax.
So something has to change.
Exactly.
And you've started using ChatGPT to simplify parts of that process.
Yeah.
But in parallel, we've been building a solution with you that will enable you to truly accelerate that process.
Yeah, so the ChatGPT thing, it's absolute game changer because, in fact, what I used to do was I would have I think most surveyors will do this. They will take the basic script that's already in the program, then they'll amend it, and then they'll have their own clauses, which they'll just drag and drop into the report. But that takes time. What I literally do is I cut and paste the clause, put it into ChatGPT, and I'll either say expand, I'll say reword, rephrase, whatever, and it will churn out. But the brilliant thing about it is that you don't even have to put sentences. You can just put little words in, and it can be complete gobbledygook.
Well, it isn't gobbledygook. You know what you mean.
For me,
it understands the context.
Yeah.
So because it's got this world model, it understands everything that's going on around it. It understands what you're trying to do. You using the odd words that you're barely stringing together, you can just brain dump.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it then picks it up and understands and can
But my spelling is atrocious, so I can even just put in any old anything.
Spelling doesn't matter.
It doesn't. It knows. It just knows. If I put something in, I thought, just try it, and I'll push the button, and I'm like, I can't believe what that has just produced, and it's grammatically correct. Occasionally, it doesn't quite pick up the meaning if I haven't done it quite the right way, and I'm thinking it doesn't. So I'll ask it to rephrase, or I might put a particular part in and say, don't mention that bit. Put it in, but just leave that bit out because it's not relevant. And sometimes it will because the problem with ChatGPT is because it follows a string of whatever you've had previously, it's still picking up bits before. So you have to, if you don't want it to use anything previously, you have to literally start a fresh page and then ask the question again, and then it starts afresh. Otherwise, it's picking up the bits from before. But generally, it's very, very good, but it still takes a long time.
So it's accelerating the process, but what it's done is it's shown you the potential of the language understanding of these models. And so as we bake that into the solution, along with the upfront processes that are smoother and easier to use, and the automatic image sorting and layouts, that's just allowing you to get to a point where you could do 10 surveys a week, potentially.
Yeah. So if we can reduce that time, if we can get that down to, half an hour would be brilliant. I think that's probably optimistic, but I don't know. But definitely an hour. If I did 10 surveys a week and I had to spend, I wouldn't want to do an hour on each one. Let's say I do 8, and an hour on all of them, that's 5 days, right? So that means I've got my weekends back and
more revenue.
And 8 surveys a week is pretty good money.
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't have any staff.
No, and I think aiming for an hour is sensible because you know your attention to detail. You know that you're going to want to refine and refresh things. And so allowing that time and having that expectation still means you can do an extra 3 to 4 surveys a week.
Yeah.
And we can then get other surveyors using it, generating an additional income stream for you.
So that's the bit that really excites me. If we can get to the point, let's be positive. When we get to the point, we will keep saying
we will get to the point. No question.
Few teething problems, but we get in there.
Always.
But because I've spoken to quite a few surveyors, and this is their biggest bugbear. Some have secretaries, or maybe their wives type the reports up that also understand surveying, because whoever's typing the report, they have to have enough information to be able to type that report properly. The surveyor surveys and the typer types. So the best person is the surveyor because he knows what he's seen and he can type the report.
But ideally doesn't have to type the report.
Yes. Yeah.
The challenge I think we're going to face is if we're not careful, we could tune a solution entirely to the perfect Neil way of doing something. And then if we've got a checklist that works perfectly for you, encouraging other people to change their processes enough to use that is going to be a little bit of fun and games. But it entirely makes sense because we can demonstrate the time saving. So you can go from 3 to 4 hours a survey, get you down to an hour. Yeah. That's compelling to anybody.
Completely.
Worth changing your process for.
The one thing I would have to do is it's how I am going to have to change the way I do a survey, which is fine. Once I kind of get into a new routine, then that's fine. But it's going to take a little while because you've got to tell the AI what it's clever, but it's not that clever. You've got to give it all the parameters to work to.
It needs the context.
Yes.
It needs the clauses.
Yeah.
And there are various ways that we can give it that information, and then we give it the structured format that we want output in. And effectively, we ask a series of little questions in the same way as you've been using with ChatGPT. We're working with a model underneath where we've structured certain prompts and responses together that give you the output that you want. But it is entirely down to the quality of input. I mean, it's the age-old crap in, crap out, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have to get it so that it's the right information going in the same way as you've seen with ChatGPT. If you don't give it the right information, it could come to the wrong conclusion. And so it's guiding the process.
So at the moment, the way that, because obviously we're still in kind of testing stage. So when I've taken a survey which I've dictated, so I dictate into my iPad, it turns it into a text. I copy that into ChatGPT, and I will say, analyze, also I will put on there, list all of the faults, because a very small portion of a survey is actually the faults. Most of it is telling people what they've got. So that what you're buying, we're buying
you
a
do
house.
Actually have 4 bedrooms.
Yes.
2 bathrooms. And there are radiators.
You're stating the obvious, but
it needs to be there.
Yeah, you're telling them that you've got concrete, you've got insulation in your loft, you've got your house is built of bricks. You
have a block and beam foundation.
Yeah, exactly. All of this information people would like to know. And then what kind of boiler? Because I mean, I deal with boilers all the time. You ask some people what a combi boiler is, I've got a clue. So they don't know that. So you're telling them, first of all, what they're buying. Then I'm just going into what the faults are. These are all the problems that I found. And so that's as important. I mean, I have done surveys where I've literally struggled to find anything wrong with it. It does happen.
But you keep searching until you found something.
Well, you've got to try and find
There's
something.
There's a hairline crack in this wall.
But yeah, you put it in. I mean, yes, you say, look, there's a small settlement crack, get some polyfiller out and decorate it, and that's it. But especially if the house, I mean, I've done surveys on houses that are less than 10 years old, and you're walking around thinking, oh, it's been well looked after. There's nothing you can spot. You don't want it to become a snagging survey where you're going into masses of in small detail. I can see some of the mastic is coming away. But if you've got nothing to add in, you start finding things that you wouldn't normally find on a normal level too. You just, I'll put that in. So at least they can see I've spotted it. But I will try and, if I do find a crack, if it's above an internal wall, what I don't want to do is to say the house is perfect, because you can guarantee that Mrs. Smith, who's just moved into a house, will see a crack and she'll say, that wasn't on the report. Absolutely. So at least if I put it in there, she can say, well, if he's picked that up, because that's the problem, isn't it? If you miss the smallest detail, they say, well, if he's missed that, what else has he missed? So you start picking bits. But if you pick up generally big things, well, the roof is falling off and this is happening, that's happening, and you miss a crack, they're not as bothered because they know you've picked up the big stuff. And then the little bits can easily be just polyfiller is fine. Just get a paintbrush out and it will sort itself. But yeah.
So if we think back if we go back 5 years, would you have thought that at this point in your career, you'd be building out an AI tool to help surveyors?
So 5 years ago, I was running a building company. I had my own building company called Halo. And so surveying wasn't even, I mean, I've done surveys, but not to this degree. So obviously you're surveying properties when you're doing extensions and refurbs, but nowhere near to this extent. So AI didn't even know what it was. No, I didn't even know. Well, actually, no, that's not true. You hear of AI. There was a film called AI about sort of 20 years ago.
Some robots.
But, didn't think that it was... but I remember when I first discovered it, I mean, I use it for everything. Even if I get an email and I don't understand it, I literally cut and paste, put it into ChatGPT, explain this to me, and it will just churn it out. I've used it to respond to emails if I've had a particular difficult email. Sometimes people will write to me and ask me to explain some of the report, and I'll literally take their email, put it into ChatGPT, explain. That's all I put, and I'll read it and think, it will come up with things I hadn't even thought of.
It's hilarious.
It's insane.
Just this morning, I said to the O3 model within ChatGPT with search thing enabled, can you get me the URLs for all of the episodes of the Skynet Chronicles?
Right.
Because then I can pull the transcripts and use that information. We're going to use the podcast episodes to work towards a book. But rather than me going on YouTube and finding them all, copying them, putting it into a spreadsheet, I put that in. I went and brushed my teeth. When I finished brushing my teeth, there was the list.
It's all there.
It's just, there are so many ways you can use this technology.
I use it. The other great thing about it, legal question, medical question, legal questions. You ask it. If I've, in my job, I get asked legal questions. It might be about boundary disputes or something. Put that in. And often I don't know the legal answer to something, and it will tell you.
So how do you know what it said is correct?
Well, you can kind of test it because there are things that I know are legally correct. So you can always do a little test to see whether, but generally, and you can fact check it. It's not difficult to do that.
But
and often if it makes sense.
Having that mindset of it might not be right and validating it, I think is crucially important and becoming more and more important. Some of the capabilities in these AI models allow you to pull back references and you can check those references.
Yeah.
But sometimes the references are hallucinated too. So it is important to check that the sources that are being provided as backing up the statement are real.
Yeah.
And are from sources that you trust.
Often, I mean, a lawyer might disagree, but generally with these things, there is a lot of common sense in law. So when you ask it for the answer, and it gives you a common sense answer, generally I don't think it's too far off. So you can still fact check it, but if that something makes sense, you can kind of generally. But I'm not saying I wouldn't use that for a court document.
No, absolutely
it's
not.
to give you a guide.
It's getting that understanding quickly and having a judgment call, isn't it? We recently went through a process of analysing our contracts, and we had our legal counsel produce new versions. And I thought, these are great, but they're very complicated language. They're quite long-winded. Yeah. How do we make it so that our customers actually understand what we're saying, and can we simplify it?
Yeah.
And so we had a few goes using the O3 model from OpenAI, so a very smart reasoning model, to analyse and come back with a human-friendly version. And then we shared that back with legal counsel, and he made a simplified version, a version that maintained the standards that he wanted, but also had this simplified language. And it's amazing because you can use it to analyse a contract and say, what are the clauses I should be concerned about within this? So any form of words, including code, you can have checked. You can have ideas created around it. You can now do the same with images, with video, with audio. And the power that you have with that, and then how you apply it to a business process is mind-blowing.
So I used it to do, I was speaking to a property investor, and we were talking about maybe me doing almost like a retainer service, because they don't want to be spending money on surveys for every property even they're looking at. So I made a suggestion, which means she didn't go through with it, but it's maybe some kind of retainer, so she can maybe use me sort of 2 or 3 times a month or something if she finds a property. And often it's just a case of, look, you just poke your head in the loft to make certain that the roof is still there. So it's not a full report. It's just literally, this is okay. It's on balance. It's
peace of mind.
It's it's fine. There's nothing that I can see which is particularly concerning. It's not what I call a proceed with caution type of property. When the people get a proceed with caution, that means you really might want to think again.
If you're buying it at auction, know that you're going to be spending more money on it.
So what? So I asked it to do heads of terms. Gave it the basic details. This is I just told it what I wanted it all. My expectations of what I was prepared to offer. This amount, work within this area, and it churned it out. And I just thought, I couldn't have written that better myself. No, it's a heads of terms at the end of the day. It wasn't.
And if we tried, it would have taken hours and not be to that quality.
Well, I wouldn't even know where to start. That's the point.
Yeah.
Often with when you're using AI, the first thing you're thinking is, how am I going to respond to this? How do I even start? So it gives you a framework to work to. So even if it's not completely right, you've got a starting point. So I can either take the starting point, read it, and thought, well, actually, that's not right. But then you could then use ChatGPT to go into sort of almost like micro details, re-explain that bit, go into that bit, and before you know it, you've got the whole thing is created
as a draft.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So if you look forward 2 to 3 months with your survey solution,
yeah,
how much time do you think it's going to be saving once you've got your process done?
If we can get this to an hour total complete, so I want to be able to complete the survey. Now, part of the new process I was talking about, I've got a new car which is internet now connected, so I've now got full Wi-Fi connectivity. That will help because if I'm using the iPad, there might be things that I can now sit in the car and I can maybe upload, if I need to upload photos, which is obviously quite
beefy, some of them, aren't they?
Yeah. So if by doing that some of my survey time or the reporting time could be take up when I'm doing the survey. So before I leave to go to the next one, that's going to help because also I'm there often. One of the biggest challenges I face when you do a survey is making sure, I've done enough of them now that I don't tend to forget stuff in terms of, have I remembered to take a picture of the boiler or where's the...
Yeah.
But the more stuff I can do whilst I'm there, and bear in mind, I travel...
fresh of mind then, isn't it?
Absolutely. But I travel, I go down to London and I priced one up actually yesterday down in Kent, which is, it's just bold. 2 hours down. No, it's fine. Happy to do it.
Yep.
But if I miss something...
you don't want to go back,
or I forgot my ladder or something, which I have done, or I've, crikey, yeah, I did one in Northampton and I left my ladder and I thought I couldn't get into the loft. And some surveyors might be, the loft will be fine. I don't do that. If I can get into the loft, if the loft is locked and I can't get into it, then that's fine. That's fair dues. We're not expected to have to pick locks or whatever. If it's not accessible,
the ability to access.
But if I know that I can get into it, but I just can't because I didn't have my ladder with me, I will go back. And I've done that twice. I've done it in Northampton, and I did it. When was the other time? I was down, somewhere down in Cambridge near Huntingdon, which wasn't too far away. But it still took up, my morning. I had to go back because it'll bug me.
Yeah.
And actually, the one in Northampton, good job I went back.
What did you find?
So there was no roofing felt.
Right.
There was very little insulation in the roof. There was the roof wasn't tied particularly well. Now, if I hadn't gone back, so.
Yeah, those details are
really important because people would have said, "Well, hang on, what?" And I'd have had no excuse. I can't say, "Well, I forgot my ladder." So it's fine if it's local, but if I'd have been able to do all that whilst before I even left the property, and I can just check. Obviously, I can't forget if I don't have a ladder, I don't have a ladder, but that's probably a bad example. But yeah, so if there's things I haven't spotted, I can check it before I leave because if I don't spot something and I suddenly think I didn't check this or I forgot to look at that.
I mean, my ideal is that you could get back in the car and have a draft report in minutes that you could look at there and there.
Yeah.
Because if we can get that processing time down to minutes so that it can be processed while you're in the car, you're able to check over it and go, well, that's all correct.
Yeah.
Apart from these points, add those in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then you're able to drive to the next location, and then you're just reviewing those when you're in your home after.
So the ideal would definitely be that if I can get, and I do know surveyors that are very, as they do the, if I was speaking to a surveyor last week and he was telling me that probably 70% of the report they do whilst they're there. But that's just the way that they do it. It's the process.
That's not enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we can get it so that it's literally you've got that report ready, you review it there and then.
Yeah,
that's almost perfection because then you've got just a final check before you submit it back in the office.
Yeah,
and that frees up so much more of your time.
Yeah, and it might therefore be that the hour that I'm saying about doing the report, that's just the report. So the survey may be 2-3 hours. Well, if I say if I'm on site a little bit longer, so I'm doing most of the report there, then when I get back home, I've only got maybe 10 minutes work just to check. It's even better.
That's night and day, isn't it?
Yeah. And, and it's, again, because if I've got full internet access, was at the moment, previously I've been using my phone as a hotspot. So trying to download a picture using my phone, it takes forever.
Yeah.
So having good quality Wi-Fi, or even, the other thing is just pop to a McDonald's or something and sit there and I can do it. But that's not ideal because sometimes there isn't a McDonald's close by or isn't anywhere with Wi-Fi.
Other restaurants are available.
Absolutely.
But I think that's the ideal, isn't it? If we can get it down so that the report is being processed off data that you're submitting as soon as you leave the house, effectively, sat in the car, using the hotspot of the car to upload the information, to get a draft report back, to review it and go, well, that's correct, but it looks like these things need adding.
Yeah.
And then not worrying about it, driving
absolutely.
back to the office or onto the next site.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the week, just having reports that are 99% there already because you've added in the extra detail. You're just checking it's there. Send.
And then I'll get my weekends back. And I might even have a day off.
I think it's so much bigger than that now, because I think if we can get that working to that pace for you, that is a huge shift for the entire industry.
Yeah, definitely.
And when you talk to your peers about, I've got this process, I do it all now, and then I just spend 5-10 minutes checking them at the weekend.
Yeah.
You'd be like, well, can I have that, please?
Yeah. So I know of surveys that they'll do one survey a day. In fact, I had a meeting with one on Friday, very local to here. She only works 3 days a week. She just does one survey a day. And that's it. So now she doesn't want to do more. She doesn't probably need to do more than 3. I do. I need to do a lot more than 3 surveys a week.
We have different expectations.
Yeah, I've got a few years left. I'm not retiring yet, but I want to maximise. I'm in a position where, I've probably got maybe 5 years, maybe a bit more, before I decide to kind of hang my damp meter up or
your ladder.
My ladder, yeah. So I need to earn as much money as I possibly can. Whilst I'm still fit, I can still, lose a few pounds, but I can still get into lofts. Yeah, less McDonald's, absolutely. Yeah, anyone that knows me will know I do quite like a breakfast. But there we go. That's stopping.
And this will help because it's going to cut down your time. It's then going to give you an additional income stream where other surveyors can use it, and that's magic.
Well, and so for me, that's it's all about getting a passive income, because if we could set this up, I think we worked the figures out, we probably only need maybe 10, 20 surveyors. That's all. But
we want more.
Of course we want more, but to be able to earn a living, yes, we want more, but it's not. We don't really
need many.
We don't need 1,000 surveyors to use this software. We need a good selection, and obviously we'll expand it. And I'd certainly, part of my time when it's all up and running, I'm more than happy to start promoting it, probably doing less surveys.
You realise you are promoting it now.
Well, of course I am, yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, so I want to be a lot more kind of, I do a lot of CPD, which means that I speak to there are lots of surveyors in rooms. Yeah. I'm absolutely chomping at the bit I know the organisers of some of these events, and they want speakers. They want people to be able to talk about something which is all relevant to surveying. I'm chomping at the bit to get this up and running so I can demonstrate it. Whether I can do it technically, because I'm a bit of a
the technical bit doesn't matter. Because I don't think the how it works is important. You don't need to worry about that. No. If it's delivering consistent results quickly, then you're talking about the experience that you're having using it.
Yeah.
And how much that experience is as value to others.
Yeah.
The fact that it's breaking down into all of these different processes, it's using these different models to calculate it, it's running on Azure, it doesn't matter. That's just, that's our problem, effectively.
Yeah.
And as long as that's operating in a consistent way, you're just selling the experience of how it's changing surveying. So let's change tact. I want to hear about the worst thing you've seen in a domestic survey.
So lofts is a bad place. I've been into really quite horrendous lofts.
What? Because they're scratchy?
So I've done, thatched cottages are not great. So as you would expect, generally a lot of cobwebs, spiders, horrible things. Because you go up into the loft and you're looking around, and often I have a good light, but you don't get everything. I've walked into nothing too horrendous actually, but yeah, it's not very pleasant. I mean, obviously, you don't if it's not safe to get into a loft, you don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably my. I'm trying to think. I've seen anything too bad really. Yeah, that's probably my worst. It's probably just horrible cobwebs and things.
Nature taking over a loft and you having to get nature in your face.
Yeah. But no, I think I've been quite fortunate. I haven't seen anything too bad.
And generally, when you're at a property and you are seeing signs that it's a property, let's say, in distress, and the owners know that it's got challenges, how do they try and mask some of that?
So my best type of survey are empty houses. I do empty houses all day long because with the best one in the world, the vendors, some of them will just leave me to it. Then there are some that like to follow you around. So often if they know, yes, I've got to be quite careful what I say to vendors because ultimately I'm employed by the buyer. The buyer may not want me to say too much about what they're buying, but the vendors generally know what's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't share information with the vendors, but it's generally stuff that they already know. It's not going to come as any surprise to them. If there's any loft insulation in the loft, they're probably going to know that, or there is a big crack in the wall or something. They're going to know that, but I don't go into masses of detail. Vendors, what they can they'll talk to you. Of course, that can be a little bit. This is why you need a process because you can lose your.
Yeah, you don't want to be put off. You need to follow the process that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Them saying it's not really a problem with the patio door; it closes perfectly as they're lifting it up with both arms and forcing it into the corner.
I've got to be honest. One of my biggest nemesis when I go into a house is dogs. I'm not a big dog fan, or a little dog fan to be fair. The big ones just are really loud, and the little ones just run around your feet. So I'll be honest, I always use the health and safety card. That's the easiest way to explain. In other words, of saying, can you please get your dog as far away from me as possible? I always say I don't want to hurt him because I might trip over him. I mean, I'm like 19 stone. I'd be tripping over a little poodle. So I'll do the outside first. And I said, once I've done the outside, then if you wouldn't mind putting little Tommy or Bouncer or whatever your dog's name is in the garden, then I can freely walk around the house because dogs can be a bit of a challenge, but also people that just ask lots and lots of questions all the time,
follow you around, like they're attached to you.
I have had a few, and they're just being helpful. A lot of them are just
some of them are being helpful. Some of them are being protective of their investment.
Well, why are you going up into my loft? Well, we need to check. But I always tell. When I do a survey, I generally tell people what I'm going to do. So I said, look, I'm going to take lots of photos. I'm going to go up into the loft. I'm going to have a good walk around. And most people just kind of let me get on with it. But yeah, there are a few which are a little bit protective, I would say.
Do you think the process of having human surveyors go around a property will ever be replaced by drones?
I doubt it. I can't. I think you've always got to have some human element. I don't know. Drones I'm not sure. I mean, it could do. I mean, if it can take a photograph and it can analyze a photograph to say what's wrong with it, it's just one step further, isn't it? But there's got to come a point where AI is great, technology is great, amazing, but we can't. Otherwise, you're just going to have a planet full of robots. You're not going to have.
Well, I think we will have a planet full of robots, but I think the barriers generally are around legislation. So, with the survey industry, some of the surveys that are being issued have to be carried out by an expert witness.
Yeah,
and it's effectively them signing their name.
Yeah.
In those situations, I don't see how it can be fully autonomous.
No. It's innovation, isn't it? I mean, 100 years ago, you didn't have a computer. Everything was done by, slate and chalk or whatever.
If we look around this room, what was there 100 years ago?
Yeah.
This table
probably,
possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just to help, it's to make life better. It's to improve quality of life. So
and improve productivity.
absolutely, that's the key to it. Because I mean, I don't know what surveying was like 30 years ago. I mean, what was, you probably have the surveyor walking around with a camera, pencils. He would have been writing everything down by hand. So we would have had to got his pictures developed. All of going back to. I mean, obviously it wasn't surveyor, that long ago, but yeah, it's massively changed in the last sort of 20, 30 years. I mean, obviously, I bet if you speak to a surveyor that's been doing it 40 years, he will tell you that it's very different. But then everything is architecture,
Every industry.
Architecture, they use CAD. My uncle was an architect, and he's even before he retired, he was still doing hand drawings because that's the way he learned to do it. And he was not very technically minded. I think he had a bit of trouble even using an answering machine.
When I first went into Perkins Engines in '98, they still had 2 people that were using drawing boards. So they weren't using CAD at all. It was still doing.
Yeah. But what that's drawings. Done is it's taken what would have taken 2 or 3 people is now probably not even 1 person now. The computer's doing anything that can be automated is definitely the way to go. I mean, my father, I remember he worked in computers, and when he was in computers, you have maybe 20, 30 people operating this huge, great big
servicing
mainframe computer, whereas now the same power is probably in my phone.
And more.
So it's evolved so much over the years. And what's exciting to me is where's it going to go in the next 5 or 10 years? And AI is an amazing concept. I use it every day.
What excites me is even if there was no more development of AI, everything stopped today.
Yeah.
And we learnt to fully utilize the capabilities we have.
Yeah.
Society still changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not stopping.
Yeah.
And so the solution that we're building with you is going to be a game changer for you.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to continue evolving that over time, adding new functionality and improving.
Yeah.
But you just look at any industry and go, okay, so that's possible now that didn't used to be possible. Producing things, analysing things, understanding a situation. And it's going to come back to the key skill that we have that AI will not have is peopling.
Yeah.
And so human authentic content, conversations like this are priceless because when you're actually meeting and having a conversation, you can talk through the detail and then we can use AI to support us in the background to accelerate the processes. But I think that human interaction is going to be even more and more important.
But my car, for example, I've just got a new car, that's got AI. I haven't worked out how to use it yet. It struggles to take my commands, but I can literally have a conversation with it, which is
it just does something else.
Things when I'm driving, when your mind starts wandering, I come up with all sort of weird thoughts. I don't know how many miles of motorway are there in the world or something, and you can ask it the question, and it will tell you.
Will it tell you the right answer?
Well,
doesn't matter. You're driving. You just need it entertaining.
But often I will find. I mean, one of the main things I use if I was where's the nearest McDonald's. I've done that a few times.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, some of some people, my builders that know me, if they listen to this, they're going to say, "Yeah, that's Neil." Yeah, I always used to turn up with a Mackie D's. But anyway, I've got to stop that because I really need.
You've got to stop. This is a future problem.
But to be fair, no, I am stopping. It's already started. I need to get a bit more stealth-like. Otherwise, I'm never going to get through these loft hatches. Some of the loft hatches I'm seeing are like literally
tight,
like that. I'll be lucky if I get my head through some of them, let alone my whole body. So yeah, it's definitely. So going back to your question about whether surveying will ever be fully automated, actually, how is technology going to open unless it's remote control kind of loft hatches? How's it going to kind of get into all these little nooks and crannies that only a human can get into?
Or if you've got the full degrees of freedom of movement in a hand, on an arm, attached to something that flies,
that's quite scary, isn't it?
it's an interesting looking.
It's probably coming in fairness, but it's quite scary to think that.
I think things are moving quite quickly. I don't know whether you watched the. Is it a Netflix or a BBC program, Adolescence?
Yes.
So that was the first use of a new type of camera.
Yeah.
And there's one scene in particular where it's close up, clearly handled on the ground.
Yeah.
And then it goes to an aerial shot,
Yeah.
zooms out, and then comes back in and is handheld again.
Yeah.
And I saw a picture of the camera rig, and it is a drone that is sort of as big as this table square.
Right.
Quad rotors, handles underneath the rotors, and then hanging down underneath it, a traditional handheld camera rig. So it's a monster camera underneath this.
Yeah.
And there's somebody that's operating it. There's two people that are holding it, and then it comes back down to be held again.
Wow.
And that's something that just couldn't have happened.
No, but it is all
5 years ago.
outside. That's the difference. A house survey generally is inside. I get it.
But some of the drones are
things
pretty
could
small.
change,
But
yeah.
I don't know where it goes. But I just think that those sort of niche applications where things are being done that couldn't be done before, that's fascinating to me.
I mean, I'm very open-minded about technology, but I don't know. I think having it all completely, having it literally sending a drone in to do a full survey, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. But who knows? You know, I mean, who thought that have? I mean, AI. Who'd have thought about this probably 20 years ago? You know, as you asked me before, where would I have been 5 years ago? Didn't even. This is completely.
Game changing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant place to end the episode.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So thank you very much for the conversation, Neil.
You, Tim.
Appreciated it.